I have missed you guys. We are back for another season of Candid Conversation with Charisa. I am your girl, your friend, your coach, your trainer, Charisa Monroe Wilborn, and I am excited to be bringing to you season 7. And guess what? We are continuing to bring you real, to bring you raw, to bring you deep truths about life, about family, about fun, about relationships, leadership, and purpose. And I get to do what I love best, answer your questions. You, my community, have been rocking with me for some time. And I want you to know that I see you. I want you to know that I hear you. And I want you to know that I understand you. You are not alone. So the questions you have, if I can answer them, if I can help inspire and motivate you, that's why I am here. So make sure you are watching Candid Conversations with Charisa every week for the next few weeks, just in case I am answering your question, or just in case I'm answering a question you didn't think you needed the answer to. Make sure you grab a friend, make sure you grab a family member, pen and paper, take notes, whatever you do to get your transformation and your breakthrough right here on this season of Candid Conversation with Charisa. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. See you soon. I just love my community. I have enjoyed answering questions that you sent in. And unscripted, unrehearsed, I've taken questions and I'm like, oh, that's a question I've never been asked before. So today's question is, how do you balance ministry and marriage? How do you balance ministry and marriage? And I had to think, how do I balance ministry and marriage? And I think when I think about ministry, I think sometimes we misuse and abuse the word itself. We make the word ministry a religious word. We make the word ministry over spiritual word. And sometimes people run away from it because of that very thing. But when I think about ministry, I'm so grateful that they use the word ministry even in government. Think about it. You have ministry of finance, ministry of housing, ministry of agriculture, ministry of energy, ministry of health. It's a ministry. And it just means that it is a sector that is used to serve a higher calling for the people. And so when I think about ministry, I don't look at it as a religious word. I don't look at it as how do you balance ministry and marriage? How do you balance church and marriage? No. And this question was very exciting for me because I'm going to answer this very boldly and very honestly. And I'm going to be very, very, very candid. I don't look at ministry as I'm serving the church, or I'm serving God, or I'm serving I look at ministry as something that I choose, a state of service that I choose to provide my service to. And so that can be God, that can be the church, that can be the community. And in my case, you know why I actually don't get to balance ministry and marriage? To me, the two are one. Because my first ministry is my marriage. Let me say that again for those of you that missed it. My first ministry is my marriage. And I'm so grateful that I had an amazing father who loved his wife, who loved his 2 children, who gave his wife and his children and his home 100% of him. As a pastor, as an evangelist, as a government consultant, as a teacher, as a musician, as an artist, he was all of those things. He was in ministry and all of those things. But you know what he was? He was the first minister of his wife. He was the first minister as a father. And he was the first ministry in his house. Like, that was his first ministry. And so when I look at my house, when I look at my home, when I look at my child, I look at my spouse, I don't look at it as a separation of church and state, if you will. I look at it as my husband is my ministry. Serving my marriage and making sure that my marriage is effective and growing and maintaining its strength. That is my ministry. Making sure that I am the greatest mother to a beautiful children and more kids to come. That is my greatest ministry. Then being able to serve you and give all of me in full capacity and form as a leader, as a woman, as a wife, as a friend, as a coach, as a teacher. Then I get to serve you as my third and fourth and fifth ministry. But I don't have to balance ministry, if you will, and marriage because the two of them are aligned. When your ministries, when your state and places of service are aligned with your home, with your marriage, with your relationships, with yourself, you don't have to try and balance anything. I like to use the word aligned. I love the word aligned because when you are in alignment, think of harmony, think of orchestra, think of being able to play all the instruments at the same time. Think of being able to do the things that actually line up and fit together at the same time. You get that flow, you get that beautiful sound, you get that music, and everything is going at the same time, but you actually get to do it all because they are aligned. When things are not aligned and you're just doing things haphazardly because either you can or someone forced you, or you said no when you should have said yes, or you said yes when you should have said no, and so now things are not aligned but you're doing them anyway, that's when you have to balance. And when you balance, unfortunately, you don't get that flow and that harmony and that let's do this together all the time. No, you get the let's stop. Let's balance on all the things we're doing. Let's make sure they scale. Let's make sure they weigh. Let's make sure they're even. That point of having to stop is where you know, okay, if I have to stop to balance this over here and this over here, maybe there's no alignment. So let's think about what is aligned. Are you in the right marriage? Are you married to the right person? Are you married to a person because of purpose? Are you married to someone because of the wrong reason? Were you forced into a marriage? Are you married because you didn't think you can say no? Or maybe are you married too soon? Or maybe you're in a marriage that you're not willing to stay in, but you're there anyway. There are so many things that can be on the table that is completely unaligned. And then you look at it as, oh, but I'm working. I'm a busy person. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm set to serve in this ministry. I'm set to serve in this ministry. This is what I do as a leader. And none of it is aligned because your home front, your marriage front, your children front is completely wayward, is completely dysfunctional. And so you're dealing, whether you're intentional about it or not, you're dealing with what's going on at the home while still trying to show up for everybody else 100%. And that's never gonna work. So I can stand here because I make sure that before I stand to you, giving you all of me 100% effectively, authentically, I make sure that I am also doing what I need to do for my marriage, with my husband, for my home, for my child. Sometimes things on the home front or the marriage front may not be completely up to par, and so we're putting in the work to make sure that things are great. But I'm always going to make sure that that is my first level of service first before I come here, so that there is complete alignment. So if your home is not working well, if your marriage is not going the way you want, and you're doing nothing, when you're standing here, or when you're standing out there, or when you're outside of your home doing the ministry that you think you're doing, then yes, you're having to balance. And sometimes it's going to be very different trying to balance things that are not aligned. So the true question isn't really how do you balance ministry and marriage. The greater question is, how do I ensure that my ministry and my marriage are aligned? How do I ensure that my ministry and my home are aligned? How do I make sure that everything and every aspect that's a part of my life is aligned with my purpose, is aligned with my goals, is aligned with my vision, and is aligned with my values. Now, I mentioned purpose, I mentioned goals, I mentioned vision, and I mentioned values. And in order for you to know if any of those or all of those are aligned, you have to actually know that you have a purpose and what that purpose is. You have to actually have a vision that you have written down. You actually have to know what your goals are. Are you setting goals? And are you setting SMART goals? And ultimately, what are your values? What do you value right now? What do you need to assess and update in your values? And are you willing to say yes and say no and accept and decline based on those values? That's true alignment. When everything in your life can actually be completely aligned: purpose, vision, values, and goals. And so as my marriage being my first ministry, I make sure, my husband and I both make sure that we are assessing the purpose of our marriage, the purpose that we have as each other and together, and the purpose that we want for our children, and what we are going to be as a parent. We look at vision, we look at goals and the values. And sometimes your values are going to change. As you grow, as you experience life, as you mature, your values should be updated. Maybe one time, I remember my daughter is now 1. I'm a new mom. And before I was a mother, there are certain values that I had. There are certain values that I had before motherhood. And then motherhood came along and those values changed. And now I have different values because her life and legacy does matter to me. I'm completely, wholeheartedly, 100% responsible for a human being for the next 18 years. And depending on where you are, a lot more. Depending on who you are culturally, a lot more years. But her complete life depends on me as a mother. Of course, my values are going to be different now than they were 2-3 years ago. I would have hopped on a motorcycle in a heartbeat 2-3 years ago. And I would have said, please take me into the wind 2-3 years ago. Now, you're going to have to beg me to get on one. Why? Because I value my life now. Not that I didn't value it then, but I value it so much more because there is somebody else depending on my life for her life. So I make sure that my decisions that I make now are completely aligned with the fact that I have a 1-year-old daughter who is depending on her mother for the next 18 years of her life to be trained, to be taught. And I need to make sure that she can look at me and she can see that she is my first ministry. Think about when you're single versus when you're married. There are going to be different values. There are going to be different ideas. There's going to be different goals you have when you're single. And then you get married and guess what? Your ministry changes. When I was single, I had no responsibility but myself. When I was single, I had no one to concern myself about. And then I got married and guess what? My ministry now was not me. My service now was not to myself completely. Now I have a husband. Then I have future children. And now I have a whole child who is saying, Mom, I need you. Mom, I need everything about you. And I need you to be 100%. And so I make sure that I don't have to balance ministry and marriage because in my home and in my life, marriage is my first ministry. And then everything else falls into place. And especially, I remember when I was single, when I was a part of a church that had different ministry of helps, even then, I made sure that I was serving. And it was a decision I made. I was single enough to be able to work and be a part of different ministries. Ministry working with the children, ministry of finance in the home, sometimes ministry of media. I was even a part of the ministry of dance, believe it or not. I know you might not know that, right? But I was a part of these different ministries. And it was because I had the time, space, and opportunity to allow myself to be a part of these service entities. And then I got married and I realized that I can't take the time that's needed for me to be a part of those and still be a completely whole, 100% accessible, available wife to my husband. And I know that God would have it no other way, especially when I've found a man that loves God. And a man that loves God is worth me honoring, serving, and respecting him. That is the way that I get to love God. So I don't necessarily say boldly that my husband is my first ministry, meaning that I don't serve God. Serving God is actually indirectly being able to honor, respect, and serve my husband. I know women, I'm talking to you. Yes, complete submission. And a lot of people, a lot of women especially, don't like to hear that. But how can you say your marriage is your first ministry? Where does that put God? No, I'm actually putting God ultimately first. When I can actually say and submit everything I am to this husband of mine, who God gave to me, who I chose to then now give myself and say, you are my first ministry. Thank you, God. You are my first ministry. God is very much in the midst of everything that I do. So I don't have to balance it. I get to have the best of both worlds when I look at my marriage and my home being my first ministry. As long as they are aligned, purpose, vision, goals, and values, I am good. I hope I've helped you. I've inspired you to make sure that whatever your ministry is, if you're married, whatever that looks like for you, this is what it is for me. Just make sure that what you're doing and what you are a part of is completely aligned with God's purpose for your life, with your vision, with your goals, and with your values. See you next time. You've just watched yet another inspiring, transformational episode of Candid Conversations with Charisa. And I hope that the principles and concepts in the episode are some that encourage you to take actionable steps to change and transform your life today. Don't be stingy. Make sure you are sharing and liking what you are hearing so that others can be a part of this community too. Make sure you are back here next week for another great episode of Candid Conversations with Charisa. See you next time.